Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today we will discuss the project cost management, which is one of the most important part of the project management. And if you, the viewers, remember that we started this project management series in which we initially covered the project management process, project management knowledge areas, and then we had some discussion on the project life cycle. Then it was followed by the project feasibility study. So today and then we had a very 6 or 7 lecture series on the project procurement management, in which we covered very important areas like PEPRA 2009 and subsequent amendments. We also discussed the important clauses of the contract, and also the price adjustments and things like that. So today we are taking up the most important part, and that is on the project cost management. Now the project management or the project cost management, as we discussed, that this is the core area of the project management, and in many cases we need to have very better control on the project cost. And project cost control is one of the very important attribute of the project manager's roles and responsibilities. So if we go just by the definition of the cost, it is a resource which is sacrificed for or foregone to achieve a specific objective or something given up in exchange. So costs are usually measured in monetary units like dollars, rupees, pounds. Project cost management includes the processes required to ensure that the project is completed within the approved cost. And as we remember that project cost overrun is one of the major reasons for the project delays. Most of the CEOs and board knows a lot more about finance than IT. So IT projects manager must speak their language. Profits are revenues minus expenses. So as a general principle, the profit is the gross revenue minus the gross expenses. Life cycle costing is the estimating the cost of the project plus the maintenance cost of the products it produces. So it starts even from the R&D phase, and then in the development phase, and then the entire phase of construction, manufacturing, construction, testing, and then estimation. So the entire spectrum of the project, from conception to the end and maintenance, and even the disposal, that is called the project life cycle. And this is one of the basic principles we discussed in the project procurement management, that you have to be careful about the project life cycle costing. The cash flow analysis is determining in the estimated annual cost and benefits of a project. So if we really want to see the project performance on yearly basis, so we have to see the cost and the benefits of the project in terms of cost inflows and outflows. Benefits and costs can be tangible or intangible, direct or indirect. So we will discuss a little bit about this. And then we have the sunk cost, which should not be the criterion project selection. Normally the sunk cost is that part of the cost which has been wasted or when the project is redefined. So the cost which is already incurred on the project, in the project, that is normally not considered for selection of the project. Now, the tangible costs or benefits are those costs or benefits that can organization easily measure in dollar or rupee. Intangible costs or benefits are costs or benefits that are difficult to measure in monetary terms. Direct costs are costs that can be directly related to producing the product and services of the project, where indirect costs are costs that are not directly related to the products or services of the project, but are indirectly related to the performance. For example, the direct cost may include the material cost, the labor cost, and the things which we are using directly in the manufacturing or construction or fabrication of some material. But the indirect costs are those costs which are not directly used in the manufacturing or construction site, but still, for example, your home office cost, your corporate office cost, and other costs of the offices which are not directly part of the projects, but certainly these are indirect costs. Our sink cost is the money that has been spent and passed with deciding the project to invest or continue. You should not include sunk cost. So the sunk cost is the amount which has already been spent once the project has become fail, or the project has become a problematic project, and whether you are investing decision is done, you have to not think about the sunk cost, because the sunk cost is normally the cost which cannot be recovered from the project. The basic learning curve theory states that the cost would decrease with the increased unit of production, and this is sometimes called the economy of scales also in the economics, that more the products are produced, the per unit cost would go down. So this is called the learning curve theory. Reserves are basically the money which is included in the cost estimate to mitigate the cost risk by allowing for future situation. And there are two types of reserves. One are the contingency reserves, which are for known unknowns, and these are the things which we normally take up during the currency of projects. For example, the known unknowns may include the things like increasing the prices of the input material. This is very common in countries like Pakistan, that we have the inflationary trends, and we believe that the cost would increase, but we don't know the exact amount of the cost increase. So that is known, but still it is unknown in the sense that we don't have the proper uh, forecast about that. The second is the unknown, and these are for unpredictable situations, like we have now the COVID-19 situation, which is definitely a force majeure condition, where the circumstances are beyond the control of employer or contractor. So in this kind of situation, we need to have some allocation for the unknown, which can be the riots, earthquake, in some uh, action of nature. Now, the project cost management includes three steps. The first one is cost estimation, the second one is budgeting, and the third one is cost controlling. We will discuss these in detail one by one. So the cost estimation is basically one of the fundamental job in which we develop the basic price of the project uh, on the current market prices, and then we budget that. Cost budgeting is that we budget that cost, which is the baseline cost, on the availability of the project money which would be available to the project, and we develop different work packages so that the project budgeting can be ensured. And then once this budgeting is done and the estimation is done, then we have to have a control over the cost so that the cost is controlled. And I have already shared my experience that one of the uh, biggest source of project delays and project failures has been the project cost variations. Now, to have the different tools for the project cost estimation, we have different tools. For example, the most common one is analogous or similar cost estimation, which is done normally for similar kind of projects based on the previous experience. And this normally uses the expert judgment, and it is frequently used to estimate cost when there is a limited amount of detailed information available. It is less costly but less accurate, and the accuracy may not be better than minus 35%, because the change in the ground realities may not be accounted for in the estimation. So this is based on the previous expertise and previous experience. The determined resource cost rates for each resource to estimate, we schedule activities costed. The standard rates with escalation factor are included, and data from the commercial databases are, and then we get the quotes. So this can be one of the very detailed cost estimation based on the current market prices, and which the quotes for different material and labor are obtained from the market, and then we develop the uh, cost estimate. Another very common, which we call detailed cost estimating, that we normally go to the work breakdown structure of the projects, and we determine then for each and every component of the project in the work breakdown structure, we determine the estimate, and then we aggregate from bottom to top and determine the total cost estimate. This technique involves estimating the cost of individual work packages and individual schedule activities with lowest level of detail. For example, if we have a project in which we have 5 or 6 components, like one is the civil work, which includes the building and infrastructure. The second part is, for example, the procurement of equipment for the labs. The third part is the procurement of ICT equipment. The fourth part may be the learning and teaching tools. The fifth part may be the training and development of the staff. And maybe there is a component of HRD, human resource development. So when we are developing the total estimate of the projects, we determine the cost of every sub-package, and then we add up the total package, total sub-packages to determine the total cost of the project. So cost and accuracy at the bottom cost estimation is typically motivated by the size and complexity of the individual schedule activity of the work packages. So as you go down into details, certainly you will get more accuracy, but that would again depend on the time available and the expertise with the organization. So generally activities with smaller associated effort increase the accuracy of the schedule activity and cost estimate, but certainly this would require both time and expertise. Then we have some parametric estimation, in which we have some parametric curve or some parametric measures like the per square foot or per unit cost or per square foot of development cost and so on. So these parameters are then developed by the organization based on the statistical data, and they may come up with some relationship or curves. And based on these curves, then we determine the cost estimate for different level of the output. For example, we can develop some parametric relationship between the cost and the square foot of the building. And based on that, we can then determine the per square the building cost. This technique can produce higher level of accuracy depending upon the sophistication as well as underlying resource quantity and cost data built into the model. So the more accurate data you have into this model or curve, definitely you can come up with the more reasonable cost estimate, but certainly this would depend on the complexity of the project and definitely on the data you have, the quality of data. Cost-related example involves multiplying the planned quantity of work to be performed by the historical cost per unit. So, for example, if the per unit cost of the building in the Gilgit-Baltistan is assumed to be 5,000 or 4,000 per square foot, and we have a building of something like 25,000, so we would just multiply 25,000 with the 5,000, and that would make something like 125 million cost per the building of 25,000 square foot. So 12.5 million. So that can be an example in which we can have an accurate estimate of the per square foot cost of the building, and then we multiply that with the total area to get the total cost of the building. There can be some softwares. We are using different kinds of softwares which are available in the market, like BIM and Primavera, which are used for different kind of cost estimation. Even the AutoCAD drawings can be imported into such in the BIM building information modeling, and in this we then can assess the cost estimate for different quantities. So we have the spreadsheets. We can have some simulation modeling, the virtual realities, and all these together can then make a good estimation. There can be a vendor bid analysis, one of the most accurate methods in which we go to assess the vendor bids, and the vendor bids are then assessed, and that can also become a source of the, if the bidding is most competitive, then definitely it can give you a very rational pricing estimate. So this may include vendor bid analysis and analysis of what the project should cost. In cases where projects are won under competitive processes, additional cost estimating work can be required to the project team to examine the price of individual deliverables and derive a cost of that support the final total project cost. We discussed this in the earlier lectures that once you are going for a bidding of a cost in the bidding process, you have to establish your own basic engineer estimate. So many times you have to then determine the cost of individual items. The reserve analysis, many cost estimators include reserves, also called contingency allowances as cost in many scheduled activity cost estimate. This has the inherent problem of potentially overstating the cost estimate for the scheduled activity. And normally in the government projects, 2 to 3% of the contingency reserves are allowed to be part of the total project. The cost budgeting, which is the second and most important part of the cost management, is then to see that how the different packages of the project would be executed in the timeline, and we normally call it financial scheduling in the public projects, which is really very important because the money would not be available for the entire projects in the day first. And again, the client would not be in a position to execute all the components of the project in the same year. So for this purpose, we then need to develop a cost budgeting in which we can place our basic cost on the timeline to see the availability of funds. And this is one of the very common requirement in the public sector projects in which we have the work plans and cash plans. And work plan is then giving us the planning of the work activities which we would be doing during the currency of project, and the cash plan is basically the budgeting, which tells us that how the money would be spent in the next 2 to 3 years of the project life cycle, life period. So in this, normally the work breakdown structure is used to see that what are the different components of the projects we would be executing during the project period, construction or execution period. There must be some reserve analysis which establish the contingency reserves, such as the management contingency reserves. And we discussed that this is very important when you are cost budgeting. Some contingencies placed to meet some unforeseen activities also. The funding limit reconciliation is also very important when you are doing the projects. The money may not be available on the day first. So therefore, you have to see the financial phasing of the project in the next 3 to 4 years, the project period, completion period, and within that, then you reconcile and see that the project activities are accordingly planned. Normally, when we do the cost budgeting, we get two types of information: that the cost baseline, that we determine that what is the cost of the project, and then we the project funding requirement, that what would be requirement, and normally these requirements are worked out on quarterly basis in the public sector projects. And in the annual work plan, we then give the work targets, and at the same time we have the cash plan in which the quarterly project funding requirement are also communicated to the planning commission. The cost control, which is the third and the most important part of the project cost management, is to ensure that the project is completed within the approved cost as per the budgets and as per the forecast. So this may include some factors which create changes in the cost baseline, and we have to ensure that these changes are agreed and approved by the competent forum, is already explained in the PEPRA regulations. The actual changes must be managed as and when they occur, ensuring that potential cost overruns do not exceed the authorized funding periodically in total of the project. So this is very important. And in the government project, the maximum cost variation which the finance department normally allows is up to 15% of the original cost of the approved cost or administratively approved cost of the project. Monitoring cost performance to detect and understand variances from the cost baseline. This is really very important to monitor the project cost on the real-time basis, so that if there is any variation in the cost from the baseline, we should take appropriate and timely corrective actions regarding all appropriate changes accurately against the cost baseline. So if there is any change against the baseline, for example, if we have assigned certain amount for the concreting and there is some change in the volume or cost of concreting, we should immediately record that, and we should see that how this increase in cost can be met from other activities, preventing incorrect, inappropriate, or unapproved changes from being included in the reported cost. So there might be a number of changes coming from different quarters which are not approved by the competent forum. So it's very important that such kind of changes are not executed in the project, because the cost which is incurred on these different activities would not be met at later stage. Informing appropriate stakeholder of approved changes. This is also very important that we inform the appropriate stakeholders right at the time when the changes are occurred, so that the cost increase, if any, due to this change occurs, it is met from the funding agency, acting to bring expected cost overrun within the acceptable limits. This is also very important. We already discussed that the overall variation in cost and individual variation in cost should be strictly monitored, so that there can be a big variation. So when we are doing the cost control, we need first of all the cost baseline, which is very important. Then the funding requirement is for the project financing, financial financing. Then the performance reports of the various against the various packages of the project, and the work performance information, the current status of the project in terms of physical and financial progress. And if there are some approved changes, the change requests have been approved, we should have formal approval and date of that approval, and also the cost increase due to that change. And then all these together will then develop the new project management plan. We will incorporate all these things. Now, when we control the project cost, there are a need for a cost chain control system. This control system may be either manual or computerized, but there must be a stringent cost control mechanism in which we can ensure that the change in the cost is detected in a very smart manner, and we can take corrective actions as and when required. So cost chain control system is documented in the cost management plan, which defines the procedures by which the cost baseline can be changed. Now, the performance measurement analysis is another technique in which we can use the earned value technique, which compares the cumulative value of the budgeted cost of the work performed at the original allocated budget amount to both the budgeted cost of work scheduled and the actual cost of work performed. So what we normally do, that we develop two things: the cost estimates, which is basically the budgeted cost, and then we see that the work of which we plan to do in a particular period of time, what is its budgeted cost, and then what is the actual performance of the project, and we see that what is the variation between the planned and the actual works. This technique is especially useful for cost control, resource management, and production. The typical problems which are associated with the cost control in the IT sector, for example, developing an estimate for a large software project is a complex task which requires a significant amount of effort. Remember that estimates are done at various stages of the project, so definitely if we have a very large and complex project, then it may not be very easy to ensure the exact project cost estimation in this kind of projects. Many people doing estimates have little experience doing them, try to provide training and mentoring. So this is another issue, that many people are not very good expert of the cost estimation, and they may come up with a problem in the estimation. People have a bias towards underestimation, review estimates, and ask important questions to make sure estimates are not biased. So there are trends that people try to tend to make the estimate on lower side or underestimate just to make them possible to win the projects. But many times this create a lot of problems. So it should be unbiased. It should be based on a rational market analysis. Management wants a number of a bid, not a real estimate. Project managers must negotiate with the project sponsor to create realistic cost estimates. So the sponsor would normally try to convince the project team on a lower price, which many times would create problem for the projects. Now the cost control tools, which are normally cost control system and the performance measurement analysis, we will discuss the earned value management. Now, the earned value technique or earned value management involves developing the key values for each schedule activity, work package, and control account. It is method measuring project performance by comparing the amount of work planned with actually accomplished in order to determine if cost and schedule performance are as planned. So we have different kinds of terminologies. For example, the scheduled work is basically the planned or scheduled work is the planned work PV, and which is the budgeted cost of the work which has been planned or scheduled. The earned value is basically the budgeted cost of actually performed work. For example, if you have planned to execute 3 activities uh, within next 3 months or 2 months, that will be the cost of these 3 activities as per the budget of the project would be, or the estimate of the project would be planned value. Whereas the if we, for example, within next 2 months, we are not able to complete all the 3 activities, and 2 activities are completed, then the earned value will be the budgeted cost or the estimated cost of these two work activity performed. So that would be earned value. The actual cost is basically the cost of work actual performed. Otherwise, work is budget at completion, which will be the total cost at completion when we are doing the project actually complete. And estimated completion is based the forecasted cost, which is the estimate at completion. So there is difference because in the beginning we have the budgeted cost at completion or budget at completion, whereas the estimate at completion is basically the actual cost of completion. Then we have the schedule variance, the change in the variance in the schedule, and then we have the cost variance, and then we have completion variance. So these are 6 or 7 terms or 8 terms which we normally use in the earned value management techniques, and we will discuss it later on. For example, the cost variation is equal to the earned value minus actual cost. Similarly, the schedule variance is equal to earned value minus planned value. And if, for example, the cost variance is 0, it means that the actual cost and the earned value is the same, and we don't have any change in the cost of work done. But if this is negative, that would mean the earned value is less and the actual cost is more, and the project is showing the cost overrun. But if it is positive, that would mean that we have saved some money in the work done, and the cost is less than what we have already planned, budgeted for the planned activities. If we go to the schedule variance, for example, it is the difference between the earned value minus planned value. And again, if it is 0, that would mean that the project is as per actual schedule. There is no change. What we had planned is basically has been achieved. But if it is negative, that would mean that the planned value is more and the earned value is less, and the project is delayed. And if it is positive, that would mean that the project has been ahead of time, and we have saved some time by good project management. Similarly, if we go to the performance indices, which is simply the ratio in case of cost, the earned value to the actual cost, and if we go for uh, the and if it is 1, that would mean that the project is project is per actual cost, and if it is more than uh, uh, one, it means the project has saved the money, and if it is less than one, then certainly that would mean that the project has been cost overdone. Similarly, in case of scheduled performance indices, if the ratio is 1, that would mean that the project is in time, but if it is more than 1, that would mean that the project is ahead of time, and if it is less than 1, then project has been delayed. Now the estimated completion is actual cost plus estimate to complete. And that means that, for example, if we want to see the estimate of a project at completion, so which is already has been executed by 6 months, and the project is, for example, for 1.5 or 2 years, then what we would do that whatever we have cost we have incurred within 6 months plus the remaining activities which are still to be executed in the next 1.5 years, their budgeted cost is then added with the cost already incurred, and that would give us the total estimate at completion. Similarly, the estimate to complete is the revised estimate for the work remaining. So the work remaining, uh, if we have fairly assessed the remaining work in terms of cost in the actual the total estimated completion will be the actual cost per plus estimate to complete. Now this is the project cost curve, which is telling us the discussion we have. This S curve, for example, is having like an S shape, and this curve is basically also showing you that initially the project cost is lower, and as we go up, the project cost is increasing, and towards the end, it goes down. So the shape of this curve is more like an S. And if, for example, you see that the earned value is the curve which is down, and the actual cost is up, whereas uh, the, uh, the the planned value is. So in this particular case, if you see if all these three curves are at the same place, that would mean that the project is going according to the schedule and according to the cost. But if the earned value is less than the planned value, then definitely in this case we can see that the project has been delayed, and the scheduled variance is EV minus PV, which is minus. In the top, you can see that the actual cost is again more than the planned value, which tells us that the project is being also cost overrun. So the earned value technique in various forms is commonly used to performance measurement, integrates project scope, cost, and schedule measures to help the project management team assess project performance. So normally we can assess two kinds of variances with the help of this earned value variation. One is the project cost variance, and the other one is schedule variance. We will take up some examples. Now in this exercise, for example, if you see in the first exercise, the planned value which was thought that, for example, the work which we would do in the next 3 months was 42,000 was the planned value as per the budget of the project or the estimate of the project. But when we, after 3 months, we could do the work of 38,000. So the actual cost which was spent on this work was 48,000. So if you just go by the example, uh, the scheduled variance is basically the earned value minus planned value, and if we just minus 38,000 minus 42,000, which is telling us that there is a scheduled variance in minus 4,000, and this tells us that the project has been delayed, and the work which was done which was planned to be done was 42,000, but actually we have done a work of 38,000, and therefore the project has been delayed. And if you go to the percentage performance, that schedule variance divided by planned, sorry, this is earned value. This is, sorry, schedule variance divided by planned value. It means that 9.5% of the work has been delayed. If you go to the second example, in which we are given the cost 38,000 was the budgeted cost, but actual cost on this project or activities which we have completed is 48,000, and we have minus 10,000 is the cost variance, which means that the cost has been increased by 10,000, and we have the cost overrun in this particular case. The percentage cost variance is equal to cost variance divided by earned value, and that is again minus 10,000 divided by 38,000, and this is 26,000 schedule variance has been the cost overrun has been reported in this particular case. Now, the cost performance index is simply the ratio of the earned value to the actual cost, and if we just divide by 38,000 by 48,000, we would determine 0.79, and that means that for each $1 spent, we have done a work of $0.79, and the project has spent more instead of $1 work. We have done a work of 0.79, and the cost overrun is something like 21%. Similarly, if we go for the scheduled performance index, we see that that is equal to the EV divided by PV. And if we divide this, we come up with the 0.9, which means that the worth $0.9 of worth has been done for each $1, and that means that the project is delayed by 10%. Estimated completion and variance at completion. Estimated completion is basically the ratio of budgeted actual cost by the cost performance index. For example, if this project was initially budgeted to be completed by 80,000 rupees or dollars, and if we divide that by the cost performance index, so we see that it will now be completed by 101,265 for 101,265 dollars instead of 80,000. So the variance in completion is basically budgeted actual cost minus the estimated completion. So if we had the actual cost of 80,000, and now the budgeted completion, the estimated completion becomes 10,1,265. So that means that there is an increase in the budgeted cost, in the budget cost, by $21,265. That would mean that we would need to have an additional cost or additional money for this to complete. So you can do these problems yourself, but certainly we have given you the examples. Now, in the construction activities, there are different kinds of cost components like land acquisition, including assembly, holding and improvement, planning and feasibility studies, architecture, engineering design, construction, including material, equipment and labor, field supervision, construction financing, insurance, taxes, owner's general office overheads, equipment and furnishing, inspection and testing. So all these are basically the other operations in maintenance. The subsequent years may include, for example, the land and applicable operating costs, labor and material for maintenance and repairs, periodic renovations, insurance and taxes, finance costs, utilities, and other owner expenses. The unit cost method, which is the very common method, if the design technology for a facility has been specified, the project can be decomposed into elements at various levels. We discussed this, we call it the top-down, bottom-up approach. Then there are three terms we are using in the construction. One is the preliminary estimate, which is normally based on the bottom-up approach, and we develop the rough cost estimate or preliminary estimate, and then we go for the detailed estimate, which is all the components of the work breakdown structure are then decomposed, and we come up with the detailed cost estimate, including all the cost elements. And then we have the Engineer estimate, which is into detail item on various component, is warranted by the available cost data. Example of detail is items are slab and beam in the float panel and the piping in the connection for heat exchanger. So normally in the engineer's estimate, we also include the overheads and other profits, taxes, and we come up with a price which is then compared with the bid quoted by the bidders for its justification. The subcontractor quotes or quotations are also used for assessment of the engineer estimate. Then we have the quantity takeoffs. The decomposition of projects into item of quantities that are measures from the engineer plane will result into procedures similar to that adopted for a detailed estimate. So we know that these quantities are taken off from the detailed cost estimate. The construction procedures. If the construction procedure or proposed project is used at the base of cost estimation, the project may be decomposed. So this can be another way that we decompose the project as per the construction procedure when we come up with the cost estimate. This is the engineer estimate, which is normally cast on the detailed quantities, and we are using the schedule of rates and material of the different departments for this kind of estimates. And this is based on the list of items and associated quantities from which the total construction cost is derived. The same list is also made available to the bidder if unit prices of the item are less, and also the bids are solicited. Thus, the itemized cost submitted by the winning contractor may be used by starting point for the budget control. In general, the progress payments to the contractors are based on the unit of work completed and the corresponding unit prices of the work of items. Item of work. Hence, the estimate based on the engineer list of quantities for various work items essentially defines the level of detail to which subsequent measures of progress or a project will be made. Normally, we are using the detailed cost estimates. For this, we determine the detailed quantities of different items, and then we are using different schedule of rates to determine the price, and that would tell us the basic price. And then we normally solicit the bids from the bidders on that basic price. There can be computer-aided cost estimation. I have already mentioned that in some cases like Primavera and BIM, we can have the virtual reality to tell us the actual cost if we give the cost data. And this can be done to very minute level also. Some of the common features of the computer-aided cost estimate include databases for unit costs such as worker wage rates, equipment rental of material. These databases can be used for any cost estimate required. If these rates change, cost estimate can also rapidly change and it needs to be recomputed. Databases have expected productivity for different components type, equipment and construction processes. We need import utilities from computer-aided design software for automatic quantity takeoff. Alternately, special user interfaces may exist to enter geometric description of the components to allow automatic quantity takeoff. So this is now done in the BIM and also in the Primavera. Even the drawings in the AutoCAD are imported for the assessment of the quantities and cost by these softwares. So even we can have the different simulation models, and these simulation models are then put into the estimation by the softwares. There can be flexible reporting format. It can give very detailed analysis of various components, and it can have the archives of the projects which are readily available for cost estimation of any new project. So these are the some of the very strong attributes of the software-based cost estimation. Now, the use of software has to be very carefully done because if you are not very good expert of cost estimate, then the software, maybe all kind of software have to be used very carefully because if you don't have the fundamental knowledge about the use of these softwares, then definitely it can lead you to some problems. So a typical process for developing a cost estimates using one of these systems would include, if a similar design has already been estimated exists in the company archive, the old project information is retrieved, and certainly we can then use that information for the cost estimation. A cost engineer modifies, add or deletes components in the project information set. If you believe that it can be changed, then certainly we can do that. Cost estimate is calculated using the unit cost method of estimation. Productivity and unit prices are retrieved from the system databases. Thus, the latest price information is used for the cost estimate. The cost estimation is summarized and reviewed for any error. So this can be done. So the cost estimation should be done with high standard and ethical integrity. The content of cost estimate most often interpreted and most easily understood by the public to be dollars that are spent on the project. The program cost estimate should be considered the equivalent of the total project price, purchase price. Uh, After the cost estimate is prepared, it should be expressed in year of expenditure dollar if there are multiple construction contracts. We did this in the cost budgeting. So thank you very much. I think we have already discussed these various parts in the earlier uh, part of the lecture. But again, this is more relevant to the construction industry. So thank you very much for the today lecture.